Hey everybody, welcome back to Joy Hub. We're Barry and Tracy, and Joy Hub exists to help leaders, teams, and couples journey into deeper joy. And we are in the midst of a series on just communication tips. And I say just like it's not important, but this is so important. And
Yeah.
Tracy's been able to help a lot of people in corporate America, and we've helped couples, and we're still growing ourselves
Yeah.
in this. And today we want to talk about the importance of even nonverbal communication, like body language and facial expression. So we're looking forward to sharing some with you today about that.
It's so true. And I remember when I was back in my corporate training days and I was training like first time managers, when I would give them this statistic that 93% of what someone will remember about you as far as your communication is really your countenance or your facial expressions and your tone of voice.
Yeah.
It's shocking for people to think they'll remember how you make them feel by the way you speak in your tone of voice and when you approach them what your facial expression is. And
Yeah.
sometimes we are not aware of what our resting face is or our normal countenance is. And so you sometimes you just have to ask people like, what is my normal, like, am I scary face, am I happy face, like give me the honest
Yeah,
truth, don't you think?
yes, and you're being sweet when you say that. Some of us know that as RBF. I, at times, know I struggle with RBF. I've seen it in photographs. I've seen it if I accidentally catch myself in the mirror and like look at the facial expression I was holding in that moment. Like I look furious, and most times I'm not furious. So um, I think this is
Yeah.
another area where we can be very intentional about learning, and even as silly as it sounds, like practicing, actually using mirrors to our advantage to
Right.
see what we look like, to see how much better we look when we smile than
Yeah.
when we scowl.
Yeah, and I can remember in my HR days, I'd have to get to work really early, and my countenance and tone of voice is very dependent on how many cups of coffee I've had.
Yes.
And so people would enter the HR office and they're like, "Is that coffee?" And they would look at my face. Oh no, she hasn't had her second cup of coffee
Mm,
yet. So it like exit out of the office.
I can relate to
Yeah,
that.
it's just so true.
Yeah.
My countenance of my face on the second cup of coffee is very different
Mm.
than, but I think it's important that people understand through our tone of voice and our facial expressions that we're open to communicating, that we
Yeah.
want to be positive communicators, that we want to
Hmm.
engage with them, but we have to be honest about where we're at with the nonverbal
Yeah.
communication, I
Yeah.
think.
And again, we're all growing in this. None of us have arrived. What would you say are some really good examples of nonverbal communication? And then we'll get into maybe some corrective things, some things
Yeah.
that aren't so good about nonverbal
I
communication.
think just having an open body posture, just being open,
Mm.
to the person, maintaining good eye contact, like when someone's speaking to you, putting your phone down, engaging with them eye to eye, you know, a smile, there's nothing better than talking to someone who smiles at you,
Hmm.
that seems happy to be talking.
Mm.
When someone's speaking to you, just going, yes, like nodding non-verbally to them, like, I hear what you're saying and I'm
Hmm.
tracking with you. Um,
Yeah, all that's so important because neurology has shown that what brings us joy is when someone else is glad to be with us. And so
yeah,
these are examples of communicating, not even just with our words, not saying I'm so glad to be with you, although that's good too, but showing it with our face, with
yeah.
our even just the charisma in which we greet somebody and things like that. So it's good.
And if it's, even leaning in when someone's
Mm.
talking, like, I am on track, I am paying, good attention to you, and even just a friendly and courteous voice. I know that I despise sarcasm. It's not my thing.
But I'm so good at it.
So I just really, there's a place to be funny and sarcastic, but if you want to be a great communicator, if someone's got a tendency towards sarcasm, I find myself pulling back sometimes in communication.
Yeah.
So just being courteous and enthusiastic, like, yes, like with the way you're responding to someone. And one of the ones we used to teach our kids is a firm handshake, just shaking someone's hand in a firm way, not being like nervous and awkward in your nonverbals with other people. And I think the last one is just laughter. It's contagious, just like courtesy is, and just, laughing along with people. It just makes everyone relax, I think. Those are all some positive, like, nonverbal communication that you can incorporate.
And again, since we're all in process, and again, I hope that this helps us all think, not only when we're in our team meetings and kind of our professional world, but also in our marriages and in our family life. What are some examples of poor nonverbal communication?
Yeah, when you're in a meeting and you're trying to build excitement and you look out in the audience and this is what you get, the crossed arms. I used to be in a manufacturing type environment, and I'd have to really try to get my tough, hard managers that were, to relax a little bit, not cross your arms. And then a real negative nonverbal is just avoiding eye contact. I don't know if you've ever had to try to have a conversation with someone and they will not look at you. Like they don't, it's like they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so it makes everything feel strange.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of us are more internal processors. And so there is the sense of, we need to gain our thoughts. We need to think hard, and we actually need to look away. But when that happens, realize it's happening, and then go back and look at the person to just communicate, hey, I'm still with you. I'm still glad to be here. I'm still glad we're together.
Yeah. And another one is scowling. I think a lot of times people will do that without realizing that they really have, like, I call it angry face. Like, I used to put up a picture when I was training, like, don't be this guy. And it was just this, image of like this grumpy, frowny person. No one wants to communicate when you're doing that. And a lot of times people will be like, oh, I don't do that. And then someone would be like, yes, you do. You don't realize that you're doing that. That's one. Another one is don't be an eye roller. No one enjoys that.
No, that's like, not a good one.
That's a communication, I think, killer.
It is.
I think narrowing or rolling your eyes is just going to be one that's always going to be a nonverbal that just communicates you're not important, or I don't value what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it's just,
or I think you're stupid, or that idea you just said was stupid. I mean, we even had that. We just had a wonderful vacation. We get off the boat. We're driving to go. We hadn't had our coffee yet. We're driving to go find some coffee. And I suppose from what you said you felt, I gave one of those looks. I don't know that it was eye roll. It could have been, but I just gave one of those looks that in that moment made you feel less than. And I realized that, and a few minutes later was able to address that I had done that and ask for forgiveness for that.
Yeah. And I think that's where, when someone's doing that, you have to be honest. And I think what I was feeling in that moment, which you didn't intend, was I felt stupid by a nonverbal. Like, do you think I'm stupid that I asked that question? So we were able to kind of work through it. And I think one other one that is like being on your phone or looking at, being distracted is like if you're trying to communicate something you're excited about and someone's like looking at their watch or checking the time on their phone, that's not a great way to feel like you're being heard by the other person. So that's, not always a great way to communicate. So I would say try to avoid those nonverbals that are not so positive.
Yeah. Yeah. As you were sharing, I couldn't help but to think about, us as parents, especially when the kids were much younger. And sometimes I felt like I was walking or or living hours upon hours with a scowl
Yeah.
or rolling eyes or not communicating with my nonverbals that I was glad to be with them.
Yeah.
Um, but again, there was always the chance for a fresh start. And I can remember, whereas, maybe much of the day felt like I was over them, ending the day, actually, they were in bed, ending the day kneeling and kind of getting under them, if you will, and even taking time to confess where I messed up, to confess where my communication, verbally
Yeah.
or non-verbally, wasn't good and didn't show love and care. And just, I think, with all that, reminder for me right now in this moment was a reminder that we still do that. We can do that with each other.
Yeah.
We can admit when we've failed in whatever area of communication, and go to that person with that and ask for forgiveness, and like we've done here,
Yeah.
say, we're still in process. I'm still growing. Help me grow in this. So
Yeah, and really keep in mind, like you can say all the right things, but if your facial expression and your tone of voice communicate something totally different, that's what people are going to remember. They're not going to
mhm.
remember the actual correct words you said. They're going to remember how you made them feel by how you looked at them and how you spoke with your tone of voice. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, that's the end of our second communication tip, and we have a couple more to share with you.
Yeah.
Um, until then, thanks for listening in, and we'll see you next time. Bye.